New Orleans French Quarter is so reputedly haunted that I've had to split this vlog into two. Now, as many of you will be aware, I used to live in the French Quarter. I've therefore arranged these vlogs by geography, so you could indeed use the vlog and follow it as a walking tour. It's in two parts, the first section west of Jackson Square and the second Jackson Square and east of it. Although technically just outside the French Quarter, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 at 425 Basin Street. Marie Laveau in her life and her burial place evoke interest in the Queen of New Orleans voodoo. The swampy soil upon which New Orleans is built makes digging more than a couple of feet impractical, especially if the reason for digging is a burial. This gruesome revelation was made soon after the city's first cemetery was established on St. Peter's Street, just inside the current French Quarter. Graves started popping to the surface and bodies floated down the street when it flooded. You can see where these ghost stories come from, can't you? The solution was to avoid burial altogether. The House of the Dead in above-ground tombs. In the mid-1800s, the site of hundreds of little marble, granite or stone houses led to the coining of the term Cities of the Dead. St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 was established by the Spanish in 1789. In addition to Laveau, many of the city's first occupants and most notorious personalities are entombed here, including Etienne de Boer, father of the sugar industry, and Homer Plessy of the Supreme Court decision establishing separate but equal Jim Crow laws in the South. The tombs here are whitewashed, stucco-covered brick and shine with an eerie brilliance. Laveau's tomb is covered with small red X's over its surface, signs the visitors have made a wish in the hope of obtaining Laveau's assistance. The faithful also leave behind offerings of coins, herbs, beans, bones, bags, flowers, and other tokens in hopes of invoking their goodwill. Erroneously, these are believed to be voodoo practice. Some believe Laveau materialises to lead the faithful to worship on St. John's Eve. The ghost is always recognisable due to the knotted handkerchief she wears around her neck. A man once claimed to have been slapped by her while walking past her tomb. As a result of the desecration to Laveau's tomb, visitors must be accompanied by a registered tour guide, and the cemetery closes at 3 p.m. It's also said that Laveau's former house on 1020 St. Anne Street is amongst the French Quarter's most haunted. Believers claim to have seen her spirit accompanied by those who are followers engaged in voodoo ceremonies there. Mahogany Hall at 125 Chartres Street. Excuse me, I always used to call it Rue de Chartres, but I think most of you will understand it as Chartres Street. In the Quarterhouse Hotel building. Suicides, killings and other disturbing tales from this current jazz club that was formerly a boarding house. The Jimani Bar at 142 Chartres Street was the site of one of the most tragic events to have occurred in America. Since that tragic day over 40 years ago, there have been restless spirits causing a stir on the property's ground. Patrons and employees of the bar have experienced strange and moving encounters with the ghosts of the bar. Hotel Monteleone at 214 Royal Street, a favourite meeting place of renowned authors including Ernest Hemingway, Anne Rice and John Grisham. Supposedly the hotel is a popular haunt of ghosts and a friendly toddler spirit. Unexplainable events alleged to have occurred on the premises include a restaurant door that opened and closed by itself, and an elevator that had stopped on a floor with an unusually chilly hallway. Legend has it the 14th floor, it's actually the 13th floor, but the name was admitted for superstitious reasons, of the Hotel Monteleone, is home to some paranormal activity. Guests have reported hearing the footsteps of Maurice Bezier, the young ghost child who haunts the hotel. One night when his parents were out, Maurice heard a whispering in his native French language and mistook it for his own mother, whom he thought was hiding from him in the hotel room closet. The babysitter thought that the boy wasn't right, suffering from delusions and hallucinations, as the lad fell gravely ill. His temperature rose and he convulsed with sickness. Although his nanny tried to tend to him as much as she could, the fever was too high, and Maurice passed away that night. The old Absinthe House at 240 Bourbon Street. The old Absinthe House was built in 1752. After it burned down was reconstructed in 1806. In 1815, the ground floor was converted into the saloon known as Alex Coffee House and was run by the nephew of Senora Juncandelia. The coffee house was later rechristened the Absinthe Room when mixologist Cayato Ferreira created the famous Absinthe House Frappe here in 1874. Whilst it has acted as a bar, there were other things being sold within the premises. The spirits of General Andrew Jackson, Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau, and the pirate John Lafayette are said to haunt the bar. Doors open and close on their own, while bottles, glasses and chairs have been seen moving around the bar. Old patrons are said to haunt the second floor. Kerry Irish Pub at 331 Decatur Street. Since the 1990s has been home to Irish music, food and drink, but it's also been home to much ghostly activity. Local folklore has it that the pub spirit are the most likely patrons who have decided to stick around in the afterlife. The Louisiana Supreme Court building at 400 Royal Street. From ghostly lawyer who roams the halls to employees who hear the eerie shoe tapping, even when no one is there, the Louisiana Supreme Court building's ghost stories are tied into the disappointment, violence and neglect that has inhabited the structure since its founding. Brennan's at 417 Royal Street. When Owen Brennan, the beloved proprietor of the old Absinthe House, was teased by Count Arno that the Irishman's culinary skills ended with boiled potatoes, he was determined to prove him wrong and ended up opening Brennan's. Some diners claim they felt cold spots, had glimpsed moving shadows, viewed distortions and witnessed changes in portraits hanging on the wall. I recall one of my first treats when I moved to New Orleans was being taken for jazz brunch at Brennan's patio, but I was completely unaware of its reputation. New Orleans' oldest church is the Lady of Guadalupe, as I'd say, but locally it's Guadalupe, and I may know a bit of French, but I really don't know Spanish, so I stand to be corrected. And it's at 411 North Rampart Street. It once went by the name of the Old Mortuary Church, and as the name suggests, was the waiting place before the dead were moved to their final resting place in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Victims of the yellow fever, murderer and the old have all passed through these buildings, and their spirits are said to still haunt it. The Dauphine Orleans Hotel at 415 Dauphine Street. The hotel once stood at the site of the city's first licence, and I don't think I can say it, so shall we call it House of Ill Repute, rumoured to be haunted by the ladies and their visitors who never left. The cocktail bar inside the Dauphine Orleans Hotel was home to May Bailey's famous house of ill repute. A former girl is believed to haunt the bar, rearranging bottles and being spotted in mirrors. The Musée Conti Wax Museum, now closed, but it was on 917 Conti Street. For many years, reports of ghosts and hauntings have come out of the museum. Napoleon House at 500 Chartres Street. This eatery and bar has had a few different roles since it was built in 1800, which has led to a variety of different spectres haunting the site. Once proposed as an exile home for Napoleon Bonaparte by the New Orleans mayor Nicolas Giraud, the home didn't see much action until it became a grocery store, run as a front for the New Orleans mafia. What has actually transpired at the Napoleon House in the past may never be known. Haunted by angry spirits, some of whom have been known to treat diners in less than hospitable ways. Because it served as a hospital during the Civil War, the ghost of a Confederate soldier can be spotted walking along the second floor balcony. Other common ghostly phenomena are from the 20th century. The figure of an old lady sweeping the balcony, a mysterious reappearance of glasses on the bar once everything has been cleaned and put away for the night. You may also see a strange youth in new romantic clothing drinking Guinness. If you spot him, do let him know what year it is now, and remind him that he now lives in Indonesia. At the Pharmacy Museum at 514 Chartres Street, the museum is filled with medical contraptions and other relics from the past. But more horrifying than the items you'll view at the museum are the ghost stories that are told about the historic pharmacy. While there are multiple spirits that lurk in the shadows at the museum, there is one ghost that has been seen with greater frequency than all other lost souls combined. That spirit belongs to his former owner, Dr. Joseph Dupin. Chartres House Café at 540 Chartres Street. The cafe is a grand restaurant but has a ghostly guest. It's known as the Galley House, and it's haunted by the ghost of Mrs. Deering, who died there in the mid-19th century. Her ghost has been seen peeking from the second floor window at night. The servants' quarters of the Galley House were used as quarantine room for slaves during the yellow fever epidemic. The ghosts of children still occupy the building and often reach out and grab onto tourists who walk through the area. There's also a ghost of a man who committed suicide in the building across the street, who can be seen airily steering through the windows of his old apartment. Omni Royal Hotel at 621 St. Louis Street. This purportedly haunted hotel, formerly known as the St. Louis Hotel, is situated in the heart of the French Quarter. There are claims that apparitions have been seen in hotel paintings and in photographs. Guests are said to be troubled by a maid who died while working during a hurricane. They allege she tucks in the bedding, flushes toilets and turns lights and faucets on and off. Antoine's restaurant at 713 St. Louis Street. It's said that Antoine Alicato, the founder of the famous family-owned restaurant, returns to check up on his ancestors. Other spirits in 19th century clothing peer from the mirrors in the washrooms. Herman-Grima House at 820 St. Louis Street, built in 1831 for prosperous Creoles. The architecture reveals the golden age of New Orleans. The house is said to be alive with pleasant, friendly southern ghosts who scattered scented rose and lavender around the rooms and light the fireplaces to make it cosy. The former owners are also rumoured to haunt the premises. The site of the old French Opera House at 601 Bourbon Street. It's said to be haunted by Marguerite, the ghost of an ageing Storyville madam. Spurned by her young lover, she committed suicide more than 100 years ago, after leaving a note that read, "I will return and kill those of you that have hurt me." The Court of the Two Sisters at 613 Royal Street. The restaurant was once part of an area in the quarter known as Governor's Row, as many of the wealthiest politicians in New Orleans lived on the 600 block of Royal. From politicians to speakeasies, 613 Royal Street made an impression on the French Quarter, long before it became the home of the famous restaurant, and as such it plays host to stories and events throughout its existence. Some of the central figures of the stories are believed to still be amongst the living. Faulkner House Books at 624 Pirate Alley. William Faulkner lived and wrote in New Orleans for a while, even finished his last book in the house. Today the house has been restored into a bookstore. Workers and owners have said to see the ghost of Faulkner, often at a writing desk. This is usually accompanied by the smell of his pipe. Sultan's Palace at 716 Dauphine Street. The Gardet-Le-Petre House, also known as the Sultan's Palace, was built by Philadelphia-born Joseph Coulomb Gardet. It was leased to a brother of a Turkish sultan in the late 1970s. One stormy night, assassins brutally murdered everyone they found in the house. Ghostly forms have been seen there ever since. Nevertheless, there's no real evidence to support this theory. The Morgue became Flanagan's pub, but that itself is now closed. And it was on 625 St. Philip Street. During the yellow fever epidemic, there weren't enough places to store the deceased, so the morgue acted as a temporary morgue. It's said to be haunted by the spirits today. Pat O'Brien's Bar at 718 St. Peter's Street. Now, for me, Pat O'Brien's is synonymous with the hurricane drink, which is well worth trying if you haven't already. Some say that the spectre of a former attendant haunts it, and many women report hearing footsteps following them in, but nobody's there. Others hear rummaging around and feet shuffling in another stall, but no legs can be seen. Even more bizarrely, some have alleged to have heard bursts of laughter. One visitor recalled a voice that came in reply was that of a man. She turned to see a handsomely dressed gentleman with a towel in his hand offering it to her. When she reached for it, her hand passed right through his. Reverend Zombie's Voodoo Shop is at 723 St. Peter's Street. The shop seems to have been the home of a Frenchman who mysteriously disappeared in the late 1700s. The original structure was built for Andres Fernandez by his brother Joseph, but to Andres' dismay, Joseph never finished the job. His plans called for a brick structure, wooden floors and a shingle roof. Andres thought the plans were simple enough to be handed over to another carpenter in the city. But the new carpenter, Francisco Garne, was French and could not translate very well the Spanish construction documents. Andres Fernandez grew furious over Francisco Garne's work and filed a suit against him. He claimed that the work was unfinished, but Garne did not agree. Fernandez won the suit and Garne was ordered to pay him a large sum that he could not afford. Garne was never seen again after the suit. And a well on the property was filled in with brick and sand, all around the same time. The well has never reopened. By the 1960s, the property had a new owner. The owner was quite alarmed when someone kept kicking the door and screaming in French in the middle of the night. Other tenants in the rear apartments have complained of construction tools going missing. The current tenant left out a hammer on the ledge of the well overnight. By morning it was gone, even though she was the only person on the property. And on one foggy night, while she was sitting at the well, she felt a clammy hand grab her ankle. The Petit Theatre, close by St. Louis Cathedral, accessed from 616 St. Peter Street. An actress from the 1930s named Caroline, who accidentally tumbled over the railing to her death in the courtyard below. A ghost dressed in a white wedding gown for the play that night. There's also a captain who watches plays from the balcony seat, hoping for the glimpse of an actress he's sweet on. St. Louis Cathedral, 615 per Antoine Alley. It's North America's oldest cathedral, is supposedly plagued by other ghosts. Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau, credited with evangelising Catholicism to slaves, has purportedly been viewed at this attraction. Other alleged paranormal activity: a light moving past the windows, a tower bell sounding softly, and objects inexplicably moving around is attributed to the ghosts of monks and slaves. One ghost is believed to be Père Dagobert, a pastor of St. Louis Cathedral in the mid-1700s. After worship, people have seen Dagobert's spirit walking with his head lowered through the aisles. When I lived in New Orleans during the New Romantic era, I sat outside the cathedral with my wife and two friends. I and the other men wore androgynous clothing and makeup. This led to a southern man confronting us, warning us not to against our activity. I've no idea if he had any authority, such as being from the NOPD Vice Squad, nor what exactly he thought we were doing, but it is ingrained in my memory. Père Antoine's Alley is named after a beloved priest who worked tirelessly for the poor. Visitors to the alley that runs along St. Louis Cathedral say you can see Père Antoine's ghost in the early morning hours, clad in capuchin black and sandals. He's also been seen inside the cathedral. Well, that completes part one, and what I want to say is, given its history, I'd be surprised. I'm not surprised that the French Quarter has many ghosts, albeit that I was largely unaware of them when I lived there. And nevertheless, I cannot help but think that so many stories owe more to tourism than actual paranormal activity.